Welcome to Week in One, the show that helps you catch up with the top news stories and interviews featured on eNCA over the past 7 days. I'm Heidi Jokos. Let's take a look at your headlines. Government reverts its decision to exempt Eskom from declaring wasteful and fruitless expenditure. Students from the Sefako Makgatho Health Science University in Tshwane protest over unpaid NSFAS funding. Police raid the former home of escaped Facebook rapist Thabo Bester. Orange Farm residents left reeling after the body of a 28-year-old lesbian woman was found buried in a shallow grave. The news week began with this story. National Treasury announced its controversial decision to grant Eskom an exemption from including irregular, wasteful and fruitless expenditure in its annual financial statements. Following massive public outcry, government then reversed its decision. It also announced this week that the national state of disaster implemented at the start of February to address the energy crisis is no longer necessary. The decision to terminate the state of disaster comes at the back of legal action taken by Alta. I filed this report.
It's been a day of terminations and withdrawals. First, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana withdrew Eskom's exemption to report wasteful, irregular and fruitless expenditure in its annual report. The minister says it will relook at the decision and consider all factors. National Treasury, however, did not consult with the Auditor General before signing off on the exemption.
We've decided to withdraw the Gazette for now and take all these comments into account and also have a detailed consultation with the Auditor General and the auditors of Deloitte and Lodge, the auditors of Eskom, so that the framing must be proper. Checks and balances for corruption are tightened.
Meanwhile, government has terminated the national state of disaster over the electricity crisis. Kokta says it's no longer needed.
So as a result of this termination, pursuant to the declaration, the national state of disaster to deal with this impact of the energy supply constraints is repealed and it's with immediate effect. So our decision to terminate this national state of disaster is motivated by the fact that the number of measures that have been taken to achieve the objectives on relieving the impact have been able to assist in getting our systems and processes in place.
One energy expert says government's flip-flopping only puts the country's image on a back footing.
This doesn't make government look good in the eyes of the public, basically because I think that before any national state of disaster or anything like that is declared, there should be some homework that government does to be able to preempt any of legal things that will come about or anything that may not work. An example of this again is also when the president announced that the tariffs, they would ask Eskom to reconsider when that was not possible in terms of law. So I think that in that vein, government really should do better in this regard.
There is a possibility that both the national state of disaster and the exemption will be reinstated. Heidi Jokos in Pretoria.
Students from the Sefako Makgatho Health Science University in Pretoria say they'll continue protesting over delayed funding from the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. But the university says it's doing all it can to assist them. Violence broke out when students clashed with the university's private security guards. eNCA reporter Paulele Tweety-Jones filed this report.
Students continue to express their frustrations over delayed tuition fee payments from the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. This time around, students at the Sefako Makgatho Health Science University have accused the institution of not working speedily to allocate their funds. The students say it's been over 4 months without funds.
If you spend 3 months without food, that means that you are created to fail. That means when these students of ours are going to fail, they are most likely going to be excluded from the funding, and that on its own creates a problem.
The institution says it's doing all it can to ensure students are funded and that the academic curriculum isn't affected. I think the problem is generally systematic. The problem that we have now is that a lot of NSFAS students have been waiting for their funding since January. And the university has been engaging with NSFAS, the principal has been doing that, engaging with all of them since January, just to make sure that these problems are resolved. But up to now, those problems have not been resolved. And hence we find ourselves in the situation that we have here. Meanwhile, NSFAS has issued a response saying it's received data from universities and will be making payments against the starter by the 7th of April. The students have threatened to intensify their protest if the financial allocations don't happen by Thursday. Pule Lichiti-Jones in Tshwane.
This week, police raided the last known hideout of escaped rapist and murderer Thabo Bester. Bester is on the run after faking his death and escaping from the Manhunt Correctional Centre in Bloemfontein last year. Police descended on the multi-million rand Hyde Park, Johannesburg property on Tuesday. eNCA senior reporter Slindelo Masikane was there.
Now, at this moment in time, you can't really see anything. It does seem as though police officials and forensics have actually gone inside. Much earlier on, what we were seeing, Sally, is police officials and forensics officials getting into those hazmat suits before they went into the property. We know that the property developers are also inside the property. We know that police arrived here at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we do know, in terms of the information that we have, we know that in 2020 Nandipa started looking for property with the property developer, saying that her and her husband want to move, and so the property developer showed them this particular property, and we understand that at the time Bester was using the alias TK Nkwana. So at this point, forensics are still on the scene. Actually, I see one of those officials coming out now, and at this point we're yet to find out exactly what they're searching for, but of course we know that a manhunt is underway for Bester, and at this point sources are telling us that he actually might be out of the country.
After the break, we'll feature some of the big interviews done by our anchors this week. Welcome back to Week in One. I'm Heidi Jokos. This week we brought you an exclusive one-on-one interview with fugitive Thabo Bester's mother. Senior reporter Slindelo Masikane found out how he grew up and how she found out her son had allegedly died. It's Bester's mom's DNA that proved the body found in his cell wasn't his.
Do you not feel safe? Have you been threatened?
I don't feel safe because I'm a phone angela every day. Every day, omunye hulo, angeke ngazi ukuthi the right one ubani. At the end of the day, abantu laba bathu bane address am. Banali di detail ka ofela. Ke tlo bona kole EMA, ke tlo nana hore ke motho a fetela ke tswela ka ntle manthunya jasho.
Tell me how you felt then when you found out that Thabo is not dead. Thabo is alive.
Next I was nekotile that's why go jwetsa go mona plekeng yena wa fihla motho aba sa mtsebeng hore na aba ngamthebi bangambulala ngoba bengiphelile bengingathi semitis bangambulala tutu umphakathi ungambulala ngoba baye bangibona ukuthi bengise situation enjani bakamlematsa hampe habhloko bane bala bampona hore na ne ke le situation se jwa le no ba tse ba ke situation se jwa wena o smesula o hlaela ke dibadi.
Police Minister Bheki Cele says there may soon be a breakthrough in Bester's case. It's alleged prison officials helped him escape his cell last year. Professor JJ Tabanis spoke to Cele on Power to Truth.
There is that topical issue at the present.
You guys can't find Bester after a year.
Bester, we found Bester.
When did you find him?
We find him, we sent to prison for life.
No, but now he's escaped.
We find Bester, prison for life and 75 years.
Yeah, where's he now?
Bester was jumped out of correctional service and we were chasing Bester for the second time. as the police. But we will find Bester.
Yeah.
We're getting good clues. I had
you got some clues.
We are getting good one. I had people yesterday trying to ridicule police by rating the house wage. Sometimes people, they don't understand investigation. You don't know things, clues that we get there. There are issues, there are serious allegations.
It's just that you got there only after a year after he has left.
We might find
a clue of where he is.
Not necessarily.
Is it true that he may be in Tanzania?
Not necessarily where he is.
Yeah.
Things that he might have done there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you confirm that you got a lead that he may be in Tanzania?
Not me. Maybe the Home Affairs on that one and AXA, they can confirm on that one. What I know, I'm trying to find Bester.
The Democratic Alliance's Federal Congress has picked John Steenhuisen to lead the party once again. Helen Ziller was elected for another stint as the Federal Council chairperson unopposed after her only challenger left the race for the position. eNCA anchor Gareth Edwards spoke to political analyst Professor Dit Kotze about what these results mean for the party ahead of the 2024 national elections.
As a voter going to the polls next year, how difficult is it to try and understand and cast a vote for a political party now when there's so much flip-flopping when it comes to municipal and provincial governance and the coalitions? I think a lot of voters could be getting very anxious next year. You vote for party A, but the problem is, even if you know who they're in bed with right now, politics, things change very quickly, as you know. So it's going to be very tricky, I think, with a lot of anxiety for voters next year. Even if they were to vote for the DA, no one knows who they might get into bed with. They say not the ANC and not the EFF, but it's politics. Things change.
Yes, you are very much correct with that. And I think that's possibly part of the motivation for John Steenhuisen to make the announcements yesterday to say he wants to have established a coalition before the election already, so that there's more clarity of who are the partners of such a coalition and what the voters, collectively speaking, will vote for then at the election. This is something completely new. We haven't had that before. Only once in KwaZulu-Natal there was something similar between the DA and the IFP, and it didn't work very well. But I think in this case, they want to, first of all, solidify the relationships between the possible members of such a coalition, and secondly, make it more public about who are the participants in something, and that it is not a deal negotiated behind the scenes immediately after an election and under pressure also, because there's not sufficient time for that. So I think the dynamics around coalitions will in the next 8 to 12 months will change quite significantly.
Prof, just a last question to you. I know I'm kicking the tin down the road once again to next year's elections, but this is what I think is going to be the talking point until we get to it next year. John Steenhuisen is now the leader of the Democratic Alliance. If they were to gain more votes next year and an expectation the ANC will lose votes, could we see John Steenhuisen as the deputy president of the country? Could he get into the union buildings? Is that how this could play out?
Well, this is certainly one of the scenarios that the DA is working with. They don't say it. They say they want to be there in their own right in government, and that they are very close to the ANC already. I think it's a bit of an overstatement of the case, but it is certainly possible that senior persons in the DA will become members of a national coalition, starting with John Steenhuisen. Obviously, we don't know in which position it will be, but certainly this is part of the scenario that is unfolding towards next year.
Coming up, more of the week's top stories right after the break. Welcome back to Week in One. I'm Heidi Jokos. Last weekend, eNCA zoomed in on two Gauteng communities that are battling to get a firm grip on crime. Residents of West Village and Westbury say promises by police to keep them safe have not materialized. Last year, 8 women were gang raped in the Krugersdorp mining town, while dozens have been killed in gang-related shootings in Westbury. And while police have been deployed in both areas, residents say they have failed to curb crime. eNCA's manhunt has more.
It's a crime that sparked outrage and sent shockwaves throughout the country. In July last year, 8 women were gang raped at this abandoned mine in West Village, allegedly by a group of armed men believed to be illegal miners. And while dozens of people were arrested, it turned out that police had the wrong suspects as the charges were later withdrawn. Months later, the real criminals are still at large.
We had not heard anything from the police, nor has there been any communication in response with the arrest that has been made, whether after the cases were dropped, that now we've got new suspects, or they had taken the very same old suspects that they had. No communication was made. So you cannot feel safe when you know that the people that had harmed the community, that had held West Village under siege for a very long period of time, are still out there.
But despite promises by police to intervene, residents say they still fear for their safety and have now taken matters into their own hands.
The community then decided that it's best that they become self-sufficient, self-reliant and less dependable on the police. They went to the illegal miners that were giving grievances to the communities and call it a truce that the legal miners must deal with the workers in the mining field so that the communities can be safe.
Another crime hotspot is Westbury, where gang-related shootings have left community members living in fear. Just last month, 13 people were shot, 2 of them dead as gang violence terrorized the area.
I don't think we're not safe with the police around here because they don't do the job. They just come to abuse people here, especially the women. That's the thing that they're doing here.
And despite increased police deployment, residents say little has changed.
You might feel a bit safe, but not fully. And then also we still do have shootings here and there that transpires every night. That happens, you know. A lady was shot on Sunday, this past Sunday. We do not know exactly as to what transpired because I'm trying to get a hold of people to try and see exactly what is it that happened with that situation.
But the shootings do continue.
It does, it does.
These residents have lost hope that police will assist in bringing down the area's violent crime levels. Mangoba Mkunu, Westbury.
Electricity Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa briefed the media this week on his visit to several power stations in March. He says high demand but low supply is the main cause of the country's electricity crisis. Ramokgopa says he's working on closing that gap. I have been covering the story extensively and filed this report.
Electricity Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa says he can't guarantee rolling blackouts will remain at stage 6 during winter. The minister says units at various power stations remain unstable and unreliable.
The 2,100 megawatts from Kusile will come in December rather, the last unit. We are entering a very difficult period of winter. I did say when I started, and I say at its worst, peak demand could be about 37,000 megawatts. But we can guarantee 27,000 megawatts if you look at the trend line. So the deficit is about 10,000 megawatts. If you continue at this kind of efficiency, so you can improve the efficiency and then also run your open cycle gas turbines and reduce the deficit to levels that are acceptable. And levels that are acceptable, I mean, it's relative, but at least as a basic minimum, don't go beyond, worst case scenario, don't go beyond stage 6. That I can guarantee you. No, I can't say that now because units keep on tripping. I made the point when I went to Matla just the other day, in the space of 45 minutes addressing management and the workers, 1,600 megawatts just went, close to 2 stages of load shedding. That's a problem that's confronting us.
Not only did the minister pick up on issues related to unreliable and problematic power stations, he also promised to present Cabinet with solutions that will stabilize the grid. The minister says the country's economy depends on sorting out the energy crisis.
There's people issues there at ESCOM. People issues nothing to do with the leadership, by the way. People issues to do with, if you like, job security. I told you that Camden is closing. There are a number of stations that are closing. Grootvlei, the units are gone. And not the units are going. That's people attached to that. And there's no additional incentive for people to apply themselves. The best that you need to run these plants don't see their future at ESCOM. And I'm just saying it's a conversation we must have. And as we say we discontinue this unit, it's important to say to us, where is that additional generation capacity that can meet this base load, megawatt per megawatt? It's one thing to have to be on an accelerated path of decarbonization. And by the way, renewables is the future. You can see the aggregate share of the energy mix is growing exponentially. But you are sitting with a crisis now that is undermining energy sovereignty of this country. People are out of jobs. The economy is on its knees. Businesses are closing. Farmers can't produce.
Kusile Power Station only has one unit operating currently, with more only expected to come online in December. The minister says Cabinet will have to approve measures he presents to bring an end to rolling blackouts once and for all. Heidi Jokos in Pretoria.
Now to a murder that's left a community in shock and sparked fears of hate crime. Orange Farm residents have once again been left reeling after the body of a 28-year-old lesbian woman was found buried in a shallow grave. Nomvula Chinene went missing in December and her remains were discovered a week ago. She is the sister of former Pirates star Bafana Bafana player Bennett Chinene. eNCA's Mangoba Mkunu has the story.
This is the last day the Chinene family saw their daughter alive, heading to a party with her friends.
That's
until last week Saturday, when their worst fears were confirmed. The woman claimed she too was being threatened with death.
At the time of Chinene's disappearance, the woman and her boyfriend Sizwe Buthelezi had been staying in this shack with their children. 28-year-old Nomvula Chinene's remains were found in this shallow grave which had been plastered with cement. It's believed she was raped and murdered.
And while the couple has since moved, their former landlady Maria Siforo was left horrified by the grisly find.
I'm glad. Nenhliziyo emnyama angiphatheka kabuhlungu ngoba besehambile kuba itholwe yithi bezongifanela bathi awukwazi kuba nesidumbu kwakho ungasazi.
As the suspect appeared in court on Tuesday, the LGBTQI community held a demonstration. They are adamant her murder was a hate crime.
It is definitely a hate crime for the mere fact that she was coming from where she was coming from having fun with her friends, and then that person found an opportunity because of she knew quite well that Nomvula is one of our lesbian sisters. That's why he took advantage of murdering her.
Emotions ran high in court as the Chinene family came face to face with their daughter's alleged killer. 34-year-old Sizwe Buthelezi opted to abandon his bail bid, but that did little to calm the community members who were baying for his blood.
Why are we still giving perpetrators of gender-based violence and femicide free lawyers at expense of women that are dying in South Africa? Lesbian women who have been killed in South Africa.
The family believes Buthelez's girlfriend also has a case to answer.
She was there, her community, it was a family. Ho batlana le ngwana bo rona o thotse. Why a thotse nako e telele ha kana kana? O tholetse eng? Se etsang hore a bue hona jwale ke eng? Ka mora nako e kana kana. O guilty le. Mahlong a rona, o guilty.
But for the Chinene family, healing and closure is still a long way to go as they await the results of a DNA test. And with the testing backlog, they've been told it could take weeks, if not months. Mangoba Mchunu, Orange Farm.
And that's it for this week's edition of Week in One. From myself and the team and to our viewers celebrating Easter, have a blessed weekend and safe travels.